exciting stuff. Good job, dear. Tuesday, November 4th, regular class. We're going to go through, take a look at the 5 elements of the plot, and then hopefully get into the beginning of our story. The necklace. Don't forget we have a used shoe drive where you can bring in gently used shoes and you get 3 B points. You can bring up to 5 pairs of shoes for a total of how many B points?
15.
Yay! 15. And then your book report, book choice is due by Friday. We have our story mountain. You can find the same information on my website. From there we have the 5 parts. The plot of the story can be broken down into 5 bits that we're going to go through and take a look at. Exposition, and the parts in blue are going to be how I'll usually end up referring to them. So if you didn't do the parts in blue, that's the part you definitely want to write, because that's what I'm going to refer to them most often. Exposition is the boring beginning stuff. It's the start of the story where they just do all kinds of babbly stuff, and it's really boring. So exposition, boring beginning stuff. Rising action is where it starts to get exciting, and all of a sudden it makes you interested in the story. You're like, it's so fun. Climax is the OMG moment. You're like, oh my god! And you find out that the main character is really like a cat that's been wearing a human mask the entire time. You're like, how is that possible? That's going to be the OMG moment where all of a sudden everything gets revealed to you. Falling action is where they explain the OMG moment, and you get to find out that the cat person was wearing a mask and was hiding its tail underneath the shirt the entire time. You're like, that's just weird and creepy. And so it's the OMG explained throughout the whole thing. And then the resolution is just the very end, boring ending stuff. So resolution, boring ending stuff from there. Then we have a mountain, and we're going to go through and have to label the 5 parts of the mountain. You have a flat part at the beginning, and then it goes up, and a peak, and then it comes down, and then a flat part over here. I'll try to make it in the background that you can't really see it. So fix that, try to make it so we can find it both together. The flat part, here at the very beginning, what part of the plot is that going to be? Gway? Exposition. That's the boring flat part where it's just not very exciting and you're just sort of finding out the background about how the cat person grew up being a cat and stuff like that. Then it starts to rise and go up and the excitement amplifies. All that's going to be?
Rising action.
That's where the rising action comes in and all of a sudden it gets exciting because you're starting to go up. You're like, it's so much fun. And then you get to the top peak where all of a sudden you hit the most exciting part of the story, Cahill, and that is?
Climax.
That's where the climax comes in, where you find out it's been a cat person the whole time, and you're amazed. And then you're like, woo, that was so much fun. Now I'm going to spin. Ball, we go into
Falling action.
falling action, and that's what comes after it, where you get to be afterwards and the falling stuff. And at the very end of it, the tail end of the story, Sydney, is the
Resolution.
nicely done. And that's where the resolution comes in. So it goes boring stuff, exciting stuff, OMG, OMG explain, boring ending stuff. So you have like a boring bookend, boring at the beginning, boring at the end. We're going to see how well you can apply this to a story real quick. And what we'll do is we'll take a look at an actual story like, what we'll do first? Lady and Tiger? No, Fisherman. We'll take a look at the Fisherman. We'll see, you don't have to write these parts down. This is just to sort of see how well it's in your brain. You have the fisherman only fishes a certain number of times, and his final time brings in a jar where we find out background information about who the fisherman is. Which of the 5 parts would that be?
Exposition.
Yeah. Boring, beginning, exposition, not very much fun. Then we discover the genie wants to kill the fisherman, and the poor guy must find. So it's not a happy genie, it's a mean genie, and he wants to kill him. You're like, why? Why would he do that? That becomes the
Rising action.
rising action, where all of a sudden it becomes somewhat more interesting. And then the fisherman's plane gets the genie back in the jar, and like, I can't believe a word, OMG! And that would be the
Climax.
climax. Then you have the genie begging to be released from the jar, and he's like, how can you keep me in here? That's awful. And so that would be the
Falling action.
falling action. Then at the very end, it gets boring again because the fisherman talks about building a house. You're like, really? Who cares about building a house? And that would be
Revolution.
resolution.
Did you say revolution?
Wait.
He's trying to revolve. Yes.
I thought that like when the genie wants to kill the fisherman, wouldn't that be like the climax because you're not expecting that?
That's the rising action that gets you excited. The climax is the turning point where all of a sudden he gets stuck into the jar again. He goes, and that's where it can get argued back and forth. There's no set thing it's going to be, and so we can argue back and forth at times. I mean, you'll usually be wrong, but we can argue. Then we'll take a look at one more story. Lady and the Tiger. We'll see how well you can apply it to this one. This is the background where we find out that the 2 characters love each other. That would be done. The girl is caught saying love to the gardener's son. We find out that's enough to get him put to death. You're like, you can be killed for love. That's going to be
Rising
action.
rising action comes in, or somebody gets interesting. Turns out to be a love story. Like, love is boring. And the princess discovers what's behind each door, and she realizes she's going to either have to kill the boy or have him get married to a hot chick. And you're like, oh my god, and that is the climax. Then the gardener's son walks over to the right-hand door and opens it, and we're like, oh, that explains everything. And that would be the
Falling action.
falling action. And then the last part, we're robbed of it because it just ends, and we don't get to find out about the boring stuff at the end.
Cliffhanger.
And that's the resolution that we get robbed of, which apparently gives us a cliffhanger. Nicely done. To prevent you from having to come in for lunch tomorrow, we're going to run through the information on the boy world so you can fix it or write down answers, or if you did nothing, write down the answers as we go through to try and help you to learn. Lewis?
To give things like that, bring me some shoes tomorrow.
Sure.
On the lunch station.
Yeah. Well, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with you getting homework done. You could have 1,000 points. You're missing 2 homework assignments, you come in for detention.
So if I
That would be a good idea. That's why I was looking at you while I said that. Ball.
Oh, I want to start the plot.
All right. So for the plot, Ball, what do you have down for step 1?
I said that Eric is failing his classes in school.
Works for me. Do we find that out at the very beginning of the story?
No.
Oh, there's a snowstorm.
Yeah. Snows, you're getting closer. What do you have down for number 2?
I said nothing close to that.
You had nothing for number 2?
No, I had something for number 2, just wasn't.
What do you have for number 2?
Oh, I said that he becomes a weatherman.
Nicely done. Eric enjoys being an intern at the TV station. So we just went a little bit out of order on that one. So something about him being at the TV station. Then for number 2, Grugine, what did you have for your number 2?
That since he likes doing the intern at the TV station, he doesn't do well in school. So he's
Nice.
going to classes.
I put Eric takes over the weather position. That could work either way on that one. Grumpy, your number 3.
I said Eric drops out of school.
I put drops out of school, big weatherman. Nicely done. 4, Polt.
Eric gets fired from the shop. Internship.
Has to go back to being a gopher. That would work. Same idea. And then Aiden, number 5.
Goes back to school.
That's what I had. Eric decides to stay in cool and not be a failure. Something along those lines. Addie.
For number 4, I said he drops out of school, then gets fired, and then for number 5, I said he gets back into school.
That's fine. That works. Yours don't have to match mine exactly. Once again, I have a feeling our 1 and 5 are probably pretty close. The idea is starting off with him working there, and then 5 being him going back to school. The 2, 3, and 4 are going to change a wee bit. That's absolutely fine with me. So then for the characters, well, I figured the first 2 characters, pretty much everyone's going to have the same. Well, 1, Jada, who's the main character,
Eric.
and who's the guy he fights with all the time.
His dad.
Works for me. And then 3 and 4 is where it can change a wee bit on that one. Shannon, you're still writing it down. We'll pick on Mac. Who'd you have for your 3 and 4?
I had the teacher and the manager of the weather place.
Same thing. I had Pat, which is the guy's manager, and then the teacher, who's Mr. Feeney. So then don't forget your explanations of each character, and your explanation for the characters has to be something that would not work for anyone else. So definitely for none of those, you couldn't put boy down, or man, because that would probably describe all of them. But Eric, I put the intern at the TV station. For Mr. Matthews, how would we describe him? Yeah. Dad, if you already put down Dad as his name, you can't put Dad again for the description. You have to do something like, wants him to stay in school or something like that. I put father of Eric. Pat, what is his job? Nicely done. Manager, boss of the TV station. And Mr. Feeney is? Teacher. Yeah, and he's also the principal of the show. He's both the principal and the teacher both. So make sure you have your descriptions that work for them. For the setting, for the when does our story take place? Becker?
Winter.
Works for me. Winter, and what else can you give me aside from winter? 1996. They tell us it takes place in 96 in there, because it says it's the blizzard of 96. And then I put winter on there too. So we're 80s, goodness gracious. 80s, 90s. For the where would it take place? Mr. Scully?
At school.
School would work. Where else?
At the TV station.
Works for me. Give me one more. Works for me. TV station, school, house. Nice. So TV station, school, house. You can also put Philadelphia. That's one of the ones. That's fine. There's multiple ones that could work. Point of view. Once again, let's do our hand raisy votey one on this one. For the point of view, if you think the point of view is first person, where you have the main character talking directly to us, raise your hand. If you say third person, where we have a narrator, raise your hand. Alright, it is third person. Nicely done. Now we have to choose between limited and omniscient. If you say limited, meaning there's one character that's in every scene, raise your hand. If you say omniscient, and it jumps around between characters, it was omniscient. Because Eric's not in every scene, because there's a scene where he storms out and the mom and dad are like, I thought we raised him right. And they're like, no, he's a teenage boy. They're awful. I'm like, yeah, I agree, they're all bad. And so they had a little argument going back and forth, so it follows a bunch of people. For the theme, I tried to pick this reason I picked this episode is I thought it would beat the theme into you, because I figured if you couldn't figure out the theme on this one, then I failed you horribly. Let's find out if I failed you horribly. Sean?
I said, always, trust your parents.
How so?
Because his dad said to go to school and he didn't.
Not bad. I went for Bumble.
School is more important,
How so?
because if you don't have a school education, you can't get a job, like he said.
Nice. But I did the idea of staying in school, although trusting your parents would be along the same idea. And the fact that he, at the very end, he even comes out and says, Mr. Feeney, how am I supposed to live without an education? And basically comes right out and says the theme. Addie!
I put never take things for granted because he took the job for granted.
Alright, you explained it. I can see that. Becker!
What about the other part of the story, like when the two parents dated?
Yeah, that was the part I said to ignore because it wasn't important in the story. It's a good try though. But it was important because it talked about love.
I put some of those on my, I put some people on my characters and then
Yeah, I have to go back and cross those out
my
there.
theme, I put I forget, I can't.
Internal conflict. Haley J. Eric has to make a decision in the story. What decision does Eric have to make in the story?
Whether he wants to stay in school or do the TV internship.
Works for me. Drop out or stay in school. Work for me. Sydney?
Eric does paper or Eric fails.
Nice. Well done. Does paper or fails. Ball?
Are we supposed to have two?
Mhm.
Oh, can I say my second one?
I just haven't gotten my second one. But yeah, go for it.
Oh, I said the dad.
Mr. Matthews, okay.
Mr. Matthews, and I said that he has to accept Eric dropping out and living on his own or try to help him.
Yell at Eric or accept his poor choice. Kind of same thing I had. Bolt?
I put the manager from the TV station, and I said let Eric stay or fire him.
Nicely done. I can see that. Oh, golly! If you keep getting up, I'm going to bring you for lunch. Stop wandering. Start working. You can copy that page in there so I can bring you back into class someday. And that'll work. Nicely done. For the external conflict, where we have the big fight that's going to be in the story. Paul, who is the fight between in the story?
The fight between the story is Eric
Uh-huh.
and the dad, or Eric and the teacher.
And how are we supposed to write external conflict?
Eric versus dad.
And why is that important in the story?
It is important in the story because dad and Eric and Mr. Matthew has Mr. Eric is telling him to stay in school, and Eric says he wants to be a weatherman, and this is his dream job and everything.
Nicely done. Something about him wanting, and that's the other part that a lot of you had not done was explained your external conflicts. So make sure you explain what's important with the external conflict. So one would be Eric versus Mr. Matthews, but you had to do a second one. So what would you do for a second conflict that's going to be in there? Bumble?
Eric versus Mr. Feeney,
How's that important in the story?
because Mr. Feeney wants him in school, but Eric doesn't want to go to school.
That would work too. Nicely done. Any other questions on there that I can help you with? So I was trying to help you guys do well from there. Once you have it done, you can come show me so that we can give you points and make life a little bit easier on you. Yay. Alright. Then, the handout that you grabbed from me, called The Necklace, which I know does not sound like a super exciting story title, but trust me, it's not bad. The drawback is the boring stuff at the beginning starts off a little boring, and then the rising action gets much more fun. And what do we call the boring stuff at the beginning?
Exposition.
Yeah. The exposition is that first column that's going to give you the background stuff. It's going to be a wee bit on the boring side. So we'll go through. It was originally written in French, so it's going to throw you off because they're going to talk about like madame and monsieurs and stuff like that. So don't freak out too much, just because the original version was the French version, and then it went to being translated. As we go through, we'll figure out the characters, where it takes place, stuff like that. The necklace. Mathilde Loisel was one of those beautiful and charming girls born into a family of poor and ugly people. She had no chance of getting marriage expectations, no means of becoming popular, understood, or loved, and she let herself get married off to a little office worker in the Government Office of Education. Her tastes were simple, because she'd never been able to afford anything else. But she was as unhappy as though she had married someone beneath her. For women have no taste or class, their beauty, grace, and charm serving them for birth or family. Their beauty and sense of humor are their only chance of ever being popular, and it put this slum girl on a level with the highest lady in the land. Matilda suffered endlessly, feeling herself born for every rich toy and luxury. She suffered from the poorness of her house, from its bare walls, worn chairs, and ugly curtains. All these things, of which other women of her social class would not even have been aware, tormented and insulted her. The sight of the little servant girl who came to do the work in her little house aroused heartbroken regrets and hopeless dreams in her mind. She imagined silent dining rooms, radiant with ancient paintings, lit by bright lamps and gleaming bronze sockets. She imagined huge entertainment rooms hung with magnificent artifacts, wondrous pieces of furniture supporting priceless ornaments, and small, charming, perfumed rooms created just for little parties of close friends, men who were famous and sought after, whose very fame aroused every other woman's envious thoughts. When she sat down for dinner at the round table, covered with a dirty tablecloth, opposite of her husband, who took the cover off the soup bowl, she exclaimed delightedly, "Aha! Cheap chicken broth! What could be better than that?" She imagined delicate meals, gleaming silverware, glorious paintings covering the walls with the folk of a past age and strange birds and fairy forests. She imagined delicate food served in marvelous dishes, murmured pleasant conversations listened to with a careful smile as one fiddled with the rosy flesh of trout or wings of asparagus chicken. She had no fancy clothes, no expensive jewels, nothing. And these were the only things she loved. She felt she was made for them. She had longed so eagerly to charm, to be desired, to be wildly attractive and sought after. She had a rich friend, an old school friend whom she refused to visit because she was so incredibly unhappy when she returned home. She would weep for entire days with grief, regret, despair, misery. All right, let's stop there. We have one character so far. Who's our one character? Oh, Matilda. Tomorrow we'll talk about what kind of person you think Matilda is. Bring back the necklace so we can finish going over the story tomorrow. Those of you who are standing, you are the last ones who get to leave. If you have homework done and don't want me to torture you tomorrow, come bring it to me. And see you later.